Hey everyone, hope you're all doing well and staying safe. My name is Mike Bassani and I'm here to represent the retail, consumer goods, agriculture, and supply chain teams here within Azure, specifically how we work with Microsoft Research. I'm excited today to talk about four main things, three specific themes. The themes that are most important for us that we're going to cover are the problem space of what we're addressing in retail, consumer goods, agriculture, and supply chain is never going to get easier than it is today, and it's extremely complicated. The solutions that we are presenting, the problems that we're addressing, the amount of complexity that exists, it's only going to get more difficult. And so we have to work really, really hard to even improve the current situation as it exists. The next piece is transparency, cost, and access. There's a vertex here between these, and inherently there's trade-offs that have to be made. Across these different vectors, each industry presents their own challenges. And we're going to talk a little bit about how research specifically comes to aid in some of the decisions of making these trade-off decisions. And finally, prevention, incident management, and complex systems. This is an NP-hard problem. These are complex systems with a high degree of intersectionality. And so when we think about these, they're not independent problems that can be solved as an independent variable. There's a high degree of overlap. And so from that standpoint, it's really important that we begin to look at the complex problem and understand it as such, rather than treat it as a single entity that can be isolated and solved for. With that, let's get into some of the context setting and how we're thinking about it. The data-driven retail consumer goods journey is one of extreme complexity. You can see here by the amount of different vectors and constituents that are part of the conversation that happens in terms of production all the way to a good ending up at our doorstep. And while this is extremely complex already, it may not be fully exhaustive of every single use case as we think about some of the seed production that could occur within agriculture or the various multimodal legs of transportation that exists. But whether it's agri-food or any retail consumer good, there are multiple parties involved and the data is almost always siloed. That's why it's extremely important as we get more forward in thinking that we pay attention to how we can pool data. This pooling of data and constituent sharing is going to lead us to have more intelligence. Today, we have artificial and in some cases, hard barriers that exist within the way our data is structured, the way the taxonomy exists, and the way the schemas are built. We're aiming to find ways to bring that data together so that more intelligence can be gleaned, and we're not simply relying on antiquated systems or latency in the way data moves to hinder our ability to use intelligence. Let's talk about the agri-food industry and even supply chain in a little bit more detail. Specifically in Microsoft Research in the agri-food industry, we've got really four different parameters that are really important to us. I mentioned at the top that the three themes, and these are the four areas that we're super excited about addressing. And so when you think about the last mile edge, when you think about simulation, sustainability, and even the data collaboration, these are really key areas within the agri-food industry where we're really spending a lot of time within our research. Similarly, when you think about supply chain, we have these same four areas, and we want to make sure that the research that we're bringing to the table gives us a unique advantage in this space. But let's think about an example in the real world of how Microsoft Research and our industries come together to solve these complex problems. Think about commodity trading and consumption. Whether you're a coffee company that sources beans, whether you're a manufacturer that sources lumber, imagine that you're responsible for buying raw materials, and the critical component that you have to provide is not something that you actually manufacture yourself, but you buy from different sources. You must think about a variety of different parameters when you're making these production decisions. And so when you're sourcing this information, you have to think about the complex verticals that you make in the trade-offs that we talked about at the top. When you think about this past year, we faced significant challenges. Look at the price of lumber over the past, basically, 3 years. Dramatic increase in pricing. How does that affect your hedging? How does that affect your buying strategy? What does that mean for the storage of your inventory? Then you look at the year-over-year pricing trends that exist. This is the cost of actual movement of ocean goods freight, at least over the past year. From a comparison standpoint, things have never seen the increases in cost that have existed through this past, let's say, 12 months at this point in time. And we don't expect it to get any different in the next 3 to 6 months. This is where research for us is going to be critically important. At the end of the day, Microsoft Research and industry are coming together to solve some of these complex problems. We need more support, but we also need industry intelligence. That's why we're looking forward to shaping this next conversation around the keynote together. Talk soon. Everyone, My name is Mike Bassani, and I'm the GM of Retail and Consumer Goods within Azure Global. That includes agriculture and supply chain. With me today, I have Juan Pajón and Michael McGowan. Juan's from Grupo Bimbo, and Michael's from 8451, which is the data science arm of Kroger. If you haven't heard of Grupo Bimbo, they have 3 million points of sale and over 57,000 routes all over the world. They have 100 brands and 13,000 products. If you're US based, you've definitely heard of the Kroger company, and 8451 is the data science arm of Kroger. Kroger was founded in 1883 and has 2,700 supermarket and department stores. And in 2015, Kroger purchased the remaining half of the then joint venture with dunnhumby, creating 8451 as the data science arm, supporting Kroger and other CPGs. Thank you, Juan and Michael, both for being here. With that, we'll flip into some of the questions and answers because this is really why everybody showed up today. So the first question I'll pass to Michael. Considering the complex movement of goods and sourcing that comes with food production, how do you think about balance cutting-edge forecasting with the way things are done on the ground today?
Great question, Mike. The last year and a half has been unbridled in terms of challenge for us. And the idea of using data, insights, and science to put the customer at the center of how we actually fulfill our supply chain is super important. But it can't take us off track. We've got supply chain is an area of our business. You can't take a day off. You can't even take an hour off. And so the ability to balance how you innovate with upstream science, insights, and technology while keeping the supply chain running, it's pushed us to test differently, to innovate differently. We don't have the luxury of having the opportunity to go offline for a week to test new forecasting models. They have to run and be implemented with high degrees of confidence that they're going to make us and our supplier partners better. We also don't operate in a cookie cutter environment. So to solve for supply chain situations that might be about fresh and perishable goods all the way through our system to help optimize routes for direct store delivery partners in supply chain. The needs there are very diverse, but they're still central to us delivering for our customers and making sure that we use the right data and science and technology to collaborate effectively to let folks get what they need.
That's great. And so, Juan, when Michael touched a little bit about perishables and some of that. And so, in your space, obviously, that's extremely important when I think about Sara Lee and some of these brands that you have under your broad portfolio. Maybe give us a sense of how you're doing this on the CPG side. How are you thinking about these problems?
No, sure. I mean, what Michael was mentioning makes a lot of sense. In our case, we might have different scenarios or complexities. As like you were saying, part of our products are fresh products. So this is why we're highly dependent on our global supply chain. And like I'm always saying to my team, we need to make sure that everything we do on a daily basis is to make sure that that truck leaves our sales centers or distribution centers 5:30, 6 a.m. in the morning. And we have 200 bakeries all over the world. So it's a 24/7 operation. It's not that we are actually baking at night in one place and then distributing. Is that when we are not baking in one place, we are distributing in the other, or we are selling in the other, we are taking orders. So it's really a high maintenance supply chain. And we are, probably we are going to evolve during this conversation about some aspirations and the vision we have. And the first one we have at Grupo Bimbo is to have a connected global supply chain. And for that, we have a very aggressive plan in order to continue deploying not only cloud related products, but also SaaS related products. We are planning to adopt a lot, and we are moving away from a place where we have a lot of legacy on-prem solutions in some part of our geographies. But that is only the first step we want to go. The next one, and we are doing it at the same time because we cannot wait that long, is to have a predictive supply chain. And this is a lot of the things that Michael was mentioning about artificial intelligence and how data is going to make us evolve into that aspiration. And this is we are building along with Microsoft. We are POCing in some regions in order to create that global model. And lastly, our main aspiration would be to have a cognitive supply chain, right? But we are building it step by step, and we are glad to have Microsoft as one of our main partners in that aspiration.
Fantastic. And I think for us, I mean, both of these answers and individuals have really showcased that the trend is really that every part of the organization is being more thoughtful about academia and thoughtful about information technology. Juan, you really touched on an interesting point there around, adoption of SaaS. And so much of that really comes from, academia and research, and the amount of data that both of your organizations have is absolutely tremendous. And harnessing that data can, in some cases, be extremely difficult. And so leaning into academia and leaning into research, has been something that, at least on the Microsoft side, we've been very blessed to have, some of the world's leading academics come in and inform our product and inform our technology. And we're obviously very excited, with both of these groups to begin doing some of those POCs and putting them to work in real applicable use cases. When you guys think about specifically bringing academia and kind of cutting edge technology into your business, we'll go back to Juan first on this one. How do you think about, balancing that, in many cases, the pragmatic on the floor experience that comes from having run a supply chain or worked in the warehouse and lived a life of, that truck deployment and EDDs, with things like, academic research and unbridled simulations? So maybe how do you marry those two up, and how do you think about bringing that type of that OR research into your organization?
No, sure, and I think that is really important. Sometimes it's really easy to get disconnected from what is happening in the real operation. So one thing that is always reminded to us by Daniel Servige, our CEO, is stay close to the operations, and this is something we are doing. And I mean, we're trying to be as much away from a centric technology organization as we can, and be true partners of the organization. So we are working a lot with design thinking aspects and squads and multi-functional collaboration teams. So we are really developing and working all this with operations. We don't want to say in technology teams that we know what they need. So we really need to go there, live their day to day, and create what makes sense for them. So we really want to translate everything into a business outcome, business insights. So it's not only that we are building this and co-creating this along with the different operations. We have a corporate team that is called our DGO, which is our central operation and manufacturing team, but we're also working with each business unit in the different regions to make sure that we understand a specific tropicalization needs independently, that we are truly building global models. But at the same time, we are creating for instance, our AI school. And we are also creating different COE, centers of excellence of automation, where we are leveraging as much as possible Power Apps, Power Automate, Power BI, some other tools. Because I think that technology now has come to a place where it's there, it's affordable, but we need to take people to the same level of understanding, and this is why reskilling our associates, and not only the business technology team associates, every single associate in Grupo Bimbo is actually taking different trainings as part of our university effort. And again, AI school, automation school, data and analytics school. We are now creating one that is mainly oriented on automation on our manufacturing to distribute process. So people is going to be the ones driving that change, and we need to give them the necessary tools to really leverage and extract as much juice as possible from all this amazing technology that we have at hand during these times.
Wow, yeah, the upskilling piece is obviously a massive undertaking. That's extremely exciting, and I think turn this back to Michael's side. You guys are in a bit of a different position, because 8451 is that data science brain, that hub that beats in so many ways to inform the Kroger company. separate from the mothership, but involved in so much that you do. And so, because you have such a strong background with data science and technology and academia, I'm interested to see how maybe you bring some of that into obviously the products and technology that you offer within 8451 as a service.
Yeah, Mike, it's a good question. I'd really like to anchor on what Juan was alluding to there, which is you've got to keep the associates that are executing the supply chain at the center of how you think about upstream work. And in our case, around using data and science to make sure that the supply chain itself becomes better. And you got to anchor that on the idea that it is ultimately about getting consumers goods and services that they need. And the way that we've thought about bridging to that is making sure that we do have really strong academic partnerships. So our head of research science in our business has led a host of academic partnerships over time. Currently, we're in a great collaboration with Duke University, which has recently led to some really improved demand forecasting models for 8451 and Kroger. The other piece that I think, in addition to like the one-to-one collaborations that we might have with academic institutions, is how academic research that's in the public domain can influence what we're doing. So we've seen great examples of public domain opportunities that has influenced our science in terms of machine learning, especially kind of newer neural network-based models. It's even influenced a bit of how our techniques around optimization and forecasting have come to life and have really been areas that we've focused on the last several years to really drive good value back to the business. So I got a host of examples in terms of how kind of academic partnerships and then publications from academia have helped to influence the way that we think about our science and using data differently to impact the business.
That's great. And so, and you mentioned a couple different individual, academic partnerships that you guys are leaning into as well. So specifically with different universities and things of that nature. But it sounds like really the kind of the consistent piece for both groups really is making sure that the science and the technology does not operate in a silo and is not kind of crafted in a corporate office or in a research think tank somewhere, that it truly affects kind of the users who are living this every day, both sounds like in the operations world, in Juan's example, then specifically on the associates in the front line and empowering kind of the Kroger associates to do more in your space, Michael. So that's excellent. I think the piece that often is overlooked when we try and think about the marriage between research, technology, and industry is delivering those business values and making sure that the technology that's coming to bear has that proof point. And it sounds like for both of you, the real crux of that is making sure you're making the associates or the employees' lives a little bit easier or more efficient kind of on a daily basis. Is that fair?
Yeah, I think that's fair for us for sure. And I think it goes back to not only in the business that we run, not only making sure that we're doing that for our own associates, but making sure that we are creating kind of a culture of collaboration around the supply chain environment so that our partnership with organizations like Juan's can put ourselves in a position where they're fulfilling the needs that our consumers actually have. And we're doing that in a really collaborative way that gets the right data in the hands of the right folks, that enables us full steam to make really good supply chain environments for our partners and our associates as well.
No, I mean, totally agree. Just not to repeat what Michael was saying, I was only compliment that I think we are in an era of ecosystems and collaboration, even more than in the past. And technology is helping to enable those, like I said, those composable platforms. That is not only our supply chain, it's the entire what we call the value chain, right? Since our raw material is getting into our lines until the same moment our product is actually delivered in the hands of our customers. So that entire value chain is built of an entire ecosystem where it's not only our own systems, but also, as Michael was referring to, our even customers and supplier systems. And we have a great opportunity to start leveraging that information in a way we couldn't do it in the past. So, like I said, the future is bright in that sense, and we are prepared to do that.
And I think part of the reason the future is bright for both of your companies is the way in which you guys have adopted, in many cases, the academia or the cutting edge technology. So I think a testament to both of you and your leadership for really leaning into these and finding ways to make them deliver business value and for your associates. So kudos to you and your organizations. And in that vein, 2020 was really an interesting year in many ways, and I think it's been often described as a year of multiple black swans, and these outlier events that kind of continue to happen. And so, maybe Juan, like, what is the one? And there could be many, so feel free to take this question in whatever direction you think makes the most sense. But of the black swans that emerged or that you felt created some type of existential crisis that maybe the group had not seen before, what's the one that you think will likely continue into 2022 and beyond?
Yeah, sure. I mean, probably not only 2021. We were living on this since 2020, right? So it's been almost 2 years now, and I think that this virtualization, where we're starting to live in a very extreme way, is going to continue. It's not gonna be something that once the pandemic is gone, and hopefully this is gonna be sooner than later, will continue to stay in a way. So luckily in Grupo Bimbo, this was not a stopper for our digital transformation aspiration. So we continue our pace in a very aggressive way, even during the pandemic, and I think that that is gonna help us accelerate some of the things we wanted. For instance, we are working really hard now in include into this digitalization aspiration to our entire frontline workers, and most of our associates are frontline. We are around 140K associates all over the world, and probably only 35 or 40K are, let's say, corporate/administrative in a way. The rest are either production line workers or our salespersons, which are the true heroes of this pandemic, because we were considered in most of the countries as a primary industry, because we were delivering basic food to the population. So those guys continue doing their work in the worst part of the pandemic, no matter what were the situation. So we will continue in the path of digitalizing those frontline associates, and everything regarding how I think we are building those now, moving into the value chain aspirations, those intelligent supply chain hubs or regional hubs that we are creating. Cloud, artificial intelligence, data, and everything we are doing is going to help us to have a much broader visibility in our value chain, and it's going to be able to create these regional hubs where we are planning to get a lot of productivity and visibility on everything that we do. The information was always there, but with the modernization of our infrastructure, of our systems, and everything that we are implementing as we speak, we are going to be in a better situation to leverage that in a way we didn't see it in the last 75 years of our company.
Wow. Yeah, that's great, and a testament to, you mentioned the kind of essential service of all the frontline workers who have continued to be on their front foot on behalf of the communities all around the world. So a huge thank you from all three of us to everyone involved in making that happen. Michael, to pivot a little bit on this one to your side, people can remember the massive shortage that was occurring with respect to certain products, whether it was toilet paper or cleansing wipes in various different times throughout this pandemic. And so, what are some of the capabilities that you have been developing to help some of your vendor partners or help some of your kind of partner organizations? Juan touched on how the interconnectedness of ecosystems these days. And so how on the retail side have you been working to try and create visibility or capabilities into these areas so that perhaps you can help your vendor partners and ultimately the consumers not be as afflicted by some of these shortages that happened in the past?
Yeah, good question, Mike. We had the benefit of having a pretty established process for data and information exchange. with a large amount of our vendor suppliers. And so that put us in a position where I think we probably were ahead of the industry to start off in this environment. That doesn't mean that we were in a great spot from a supply perspective, because it was just an unheard of shortage of supply through the system. And I think our focus as we've looked forward and we've learned from 2020 has been about like how do you deploy platforms and systems that give flexibility to vendors to be able to make sure that they have the right intelligence to fulfill to the best of their ability end-to-end supply chain opportunities. There's a ton of complex information and data that can go into that, and certainly put some stress in the system. But we're pushing ourselves to think about how technology, and certainly some of the work that we're doing with Microsoft, can be a big enabler to the future of how we want to engage, whether it's two-way collaboration, whether it's about flexibility in terms of system integration, or it's an accelerant to how we can advance optimization and forecasting science to some extent, while kind of fostering that culture of collaboration with kind of data at the center as well. So lots of work to do on it, but I think an area that the intersection of tech, really good science, and good collaboration can really pay off for all parties.
Well said. No, it's exciting, and I think as a consumer, I'm hopefully bullish and hoping you're going to be successful, so that on the other side we're not faced with those shortages of some of those health and personal care items. So, no, this has been absolutely fantastic. We have obviously a large body of computer scientists and some of the most forefront researchers all over the world will be paying attention to this summit. And so, maybe in closing, as you think about some of the trends that are there and the audience that you're speaking to, who in many cases are going to be working to develop some of the most kind of cutting edge technology and approaches for organizational behavior, research, agriculture, things of that nature. What are some of the problems, and I'll pose this to each of you, and Michael, you can go first, and then pass to Juan. Some of the problems that you believe deserve the attention of some of the brightest minds in the world today to help solve.
Boy, I don't think we have enough time. I think they'll shut us off to go down the full list before we could get through it. So if I was going to channel the head of our research science, and he was here with me, he would share with us that I think like computer visioning is a big one. Robotics is certainly in our space and some place that we're spending a lot of good time on. Additionally, I think new sensors is probably an area that we've started to discuss internally and with partners on how to get better at. You think about like the ability to unlock, more information about customer location, real-time delivery communications, to kind of influence and capture key moments of a shopping cycle would be really important. And really just an overarching lens of how innovation from, this community of folks can help us improve data quality and data reliability, will ultimately help us drive kind of, more value through the supply chain, but just through the retail system in total. Juan, I'd love your thoughts too.
No, sure. If I need to make a very generic statement, I would probably say that everything that is going to build into a providing more predictability on what we do is gonna be one of the things we will see as much more value added in that sense. So I think that we have everything now in our hands, and we only need to start making the connections between the dots, between the information, between adding artificial intelligence on top of that. So everything that we need is there. We just need to concentrate on how we can make our operations more predictable, and trying to be, in order to avoid disruptions to the business, less reactive. But some specific that I wanted to mention is today we are working, like I said, in an ecosystem area in different platforms, and we need to start forgetting what are the different technologies behind the different solutions we are providing. We need to start building that layer with all these different technologies, and not only our own internal systems, but also the ones in our vendors, in our customers, can start talking each other using the same language. And I think that this is where we can give a much more larger step of where we are today. Then sustainability is something really important for Grupo Bimbo. That's an area where we are working really close with Microsoft in that sense, but that's an area where I think we need to evolve faster than where we are today in every scope 1, scope 2, and scope 3 in that sense. Traceability of our goods, that's another thing that is gonna become, it's already something important, but it's gonna become something I think more important in the near future.
Well, that's fantastic. And I think, on behalf of Microsoft Research, all of the academics that are here, everyone in Azure, and specifically myself, thank you both for being here and sharing your thoughts, the direction that your companies are going, and frankly, the willingness that you have to partner with Microsoft is something that gives everyone a ton of energy on our side, and we look forward to delivering some fantastic results with both of your organizations here this year and in the future.